Hello, I am a nerd. Yesterday, I read The Diary of a Wimpy Kid cover to cover, and without stopping, in one afternoon. I was pretty much amazed. I didn't read this as a kid, it was interesting. But I found some really cool things in the book. For starters, I really related to Rowley's struggles in the book. Rowley being Greg's best friend. And well, he seemed a bit autistic. Rowley, I am not a doctor. I don't know how to diagnose people, but as a fellow autistic person, Rowley just seemed to hit the tism buttons right on the nose. You kind of have a bit of a radar for people with autism, and Rowley set off kind of alarm bells. As well as that, the main character, Greg, is a bit of a narcissist. For instance, I want to focus on a few things. For instance, let's start with the comic book. When there was a position that opened for the school paper, a comic book artist, Greg sat there at the table, and he didn't let his friend Rowley do anything he wanted to do. Rowley was not given a say in what the comic was doing, and then when he was allowed to write what he was doing, Greg came up with something called Zooey Mama, which was how he ended the comic book. But he abandoned that because he thought it was lame. And Rowley, he wanted to keep doing Zooey Mamas. And Greg eventually won that contest. Granted, the contest to be in the school paper with the comic book. And he knew with the dumb kids in school, he'd never run out of material. And he entered his comic, the teachers butchered it. They tried to make it into a lesson about school, and that's not what any kid wanted. Secondly, this is where we get to a big incident. So what Greg did was, I'll see if I can even find the pages actually. What Greg did, that's the play, sorry, I just remembered something. So what Greg did was absolutely insane. Him and Rowley entered basically a hot chocolate patrol. When I say that, it's kind of like being a school hall monitor. This is a picture of the comic they did, by the way. And when he was a hall monitor, he got things done. Like he could get to skip out on pre-algebra, him and Rowley both. But Greg ruined it. He was walking the primary school kids home one afternoon when he found some worms and chased them with a worms on a stick. I'll see if I can find the picture of that. Anywho, he chased them home with a worms on a stick. And he was in Rowley's jumper. And one of Rowley's mum's friends caught him red-handed doing it and thought he was Rowley. And because he thought he was Rowley, she dobbed into the school and told them Rowley was chasing primary school kids home with worms on a stick. You need to be sure it's the person you're telling off who did those things before you actually punish them. And Rowley got in trouble for what Greg was doing. And I was very hurt by that. Rowley's my autistic buddy. And it gets worse because... Because Rowley got in big trouble. He got hit off the hot chocolate patrol. And well, because he was thrown off the hot chocolate patrol, Greg got to keep doing it like nothing happened. And well, so sorry, I'm trying to find the scene. Anywho, it was really, really, really bad. Because he got punished big time and kicked off and was suspended from the force. But he told his friend like nothing happened what he did, and he seemed quite narcissistic about it. He was blamed by his friends, and his friend went to the principal and told him that it was Greg all along. And he said we could... By the way, when he was telling his friend about it, it's like, we can each learn something from this. I can learn not to do things in front of her house, and you can learn... And by the way, the school should have been more careful to get the right person. But Greg here, he should have come forward and set the record straight, even though it meant he would get in trouble. Because for his dishonesty, he was kicked off the force. And Rowley got a promotion because the school realized we screwed up. We screwed up big time. And then this sucker in the pirate costume, Greg went outside the door of the club before school and asked Rowley for some hot chocolate like they were still friends. Anywho, his comic book ended up making the paper, but he quit because the teachers were destroying what he was saying. And Rowley came back in with the Zooey Mama jokes and actually became very popular. And Greg had made it clear he didn't want to do the Zooey Mama jokes. And Rowley, rightfully so after an incident like that, said that he invented Zooey Mama. Without him, that joke would have died with Greg. And Rowley just seems like he wants to have fun. And there was another incident on Halloween. This was my favorite part of the book. I'll see if I can find some Halloween pages for you guys. Anywho, during Halloween, Greg wanted to hit a whole bunch of houses so he could get a whole bunch of candy. And Rowley was willing to follow him home. And well, basically they got in trouble with some teenagers and chased for the rest of their Halloween. They had to cut through some backyards, but they made it safely to their grandmother's house. And this is Greg's mum's fault. Because Greg's mum she assumed they were out late trying to be brats, and she demanded they come home at once, even though they were in physical danger, So they had to make a break for it or else they'd be in trouble. And well, that was just really awful for both of them. But this brings me to the climax of this epic tale. Just remember, Greg was dressed as a pirate and, sorry, I shouldn't. Basically, Greg, they made it home. Their dad splashed them with. So, the bullies from Halloween came back to haunt them. The bullies from Halloween had cornered them. All the other kids ran away who were expecting them to fight because they're former friends and all that. And the bullies forced Rowley to eat all of the cheese. Greg got out of it by saying he was lactose intolerant. And rightfully so, Greg kept his mouth shut as Rowley shivered after that whole incident. But, gets worse. Greg, he followed Rowley home. Greg followed Rowley home. And, at the very end, and this is the bit that makes me want to come back, at the very end, he took the fall for Rowley, saying he put the cheese in the bin, which meant he had the cheese touch. By the way, kudos to the writers for having that cheese as a plot point from the very beginning of the book. So now Greg had the cheese touch. And, that's the first selfless act he does in the entire book. Right at the end. So it kind of carries a lot of weight because it's the first time he stands up for Rowley and the first time he does something selfless. I'm kind of excited to read more, honestly. If you liked this video and made it this far, I would be honored if you'd subscribe. And if this video does well, I might make some more Diary of a Wimpy Kid content. This video is sponsored by vidIQ, link in the description and the pinned comment. Thank you, we are nerds, have a good day.